friends, we're going to go ahead and get started. It is 11:01 a.m. and we have about, I believe, a total of 33 or so participants for this call today. And I'm watching the manage participants little icon at the bottom. Looks like people are slowly joining. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I have certainly been on more webinars this week than in my entire life. And am definitely feeling a little webinared out. So I'm really happy that you guys did make a decision to join us today. TGIF, so we are almost to the weekend. If you're in Atlanta, it's gonna be a beautiful weekend, so I encourage you to get outside. Pollen doesn't feel nearly as bad as it has been, and just try to decompress. All right, so again, thank you to everyone for joining us. And again, some folks are trickling in right now. I'd like to express my gratitude to all of you guys out there that work on behalf of community, nonprofit organizations, issue areas, neighborhoods, a corporate institution, philanthropy, whatever it is that you're still out there leading and doing during all of this chaos. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. You guys are the heroes of everything that's going on right now, including our Kroger and CVS folks and everybody out there still making sure we have a little bit of normalcy in our lives. And so keep up the good work. Know that you can't lead just in the good times, you have to lead in also the hard times. It does take a toll on your soul, but at the end of it, guys, we're gonna come out even better and stronger than we have been in the past. So today's topic is around reimagining volunteer impact. And a quick agenda and something a little bit unique is that we are not going to have a PowerPoint today. I have, again, been on a lot of webinars and seen a lot of PowerPoints. And I am happy to just have a chat among friends. I know most of you guys on the call, and to see your faces and hear your voices instead of looking at a PowerPoint. So run a show for today. We're gonna give everyone an opportunity to introduce themselves briefly. Then I have some opening comments to get us started. We do have Cheryl Courtmeyer with the Corporate Volunteer Council on the video today. Hello, Cheryl, she's waving at us. For about 15 minutes to talk about corporate volunteerism. And then we're going to talk about a worksheet that we developed in lieu of a PowerPoint where you can actually follow along. You should have received it in your reminder about today's call. It's set up as a, guys, if you haven't muted yourself, please mute yourself. Please, please, please. Thank you. But it's a worksheet. It is set up in a Word document, so you can set it as a Google Doc or just a traditional Word document to make some notes, capture some of your thoughts, capture other folks' ideas, and actually as a tool that you will have as you leave this call today and you're really thinking about reimagining volunteer impact. Before we get started, so we're doing that and then we'll have a Q&A at the end. And as a little side note, we looked at doing a format different today and we had only 45 minutes scheduled for this. However, if you'd like to stay on from 11:45 until 12, just for questions or chatting or just, again, just to simply feel connected with people, please do feel free to jump on. I will be jumping off at noon to get on yet another webinar. And I have one more after that and then done for the day and hopefully some gardening. Folks that helped pull this together today, I'd like to recognize. One, we have Logan Serrano, who has been our tech person, and she's the one that will be including notes in chat about muting yourselves or any other tech issues we might have. Mel Shinstone, who has been by my side on so many different projects we've been working on recently, and incredibly flexible and nimble with the fact that nothing's what it was when she first started working with me. And again, lastly, to Cheryl, for being gracious enough to spend some time with us today. So let's hear from you guys. And so since right now we're at about 17 participants, They're slowly increasing in number, so I'm guessing we'll probably get to 20, maybe a little bit over 20. I'd like for everyone to, one, say your name, two, say the organization that you represent, and three, in short words, tell us, what is your temperature today? So are you feeling hot? And then tell us very briefly why. Are you feeling cold? Tell us why. Are you feeling lukewarm? Again, tell us why. And I would like for y'all that know me well, I do have a personality that likes to be silly, and it is Friday. Want y'all to meet Charlie the chicken. Charlie is the volunteer for today who is going to help me make sure that we stay on time. So when you see Charlie start to creep on the screen, that means you're getting close to being done. If you hear Charlie go like that, that means you need to conclude and let someone else speak so that we can move on. Again, this is an entirely new format. I'm trying to pull this off in 45 minutes. So but for those that have webinars after hours, you got 15 minutes to do what you need to do to close out this one and get ready for the next one. Just a little note about Charlie. I started using him, I guess about a year and a half ago in some of the workshops I was doing for Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. And the orange is a nod to CFGA. They are the ones that really helped me get my workshop series started years ago, and I'm forever grateful. And then a little shout out to Cheryl, helped me come up with the name, Charlie the Crazy Chicken. All right, so Kat, you are the first up to again tell us your name, your organization, what's your temperature today, and very, very briefly why.
Hi, I'm Kat Doyle. I'm with the Archdiocese of Atlanta, Director of Justice and Peace Ministries. And guess I'm hot. I'm getting ready to throw a virtual surprise party for my boss's birthday today. So there you go.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Kat. Mel, you're up.
Hey everyone, I'm Mel Shenstone. I work with Michelle among some other projects, and my background is in organizing, like campaign organizing. And I would say I am warming up. I've had kind of a lot on my plate, a lot of uncertainty. I still have some, but maybe it's just the weather, or maybe I'm getting better space for myself, but I'm starting to unfurl a little bit.
Good. And again, thank you, Mel, for everything you've done to help me out and be a cheerleader and making sure I don't jump off a cliff sometimes. So thank you. Next, we have Cheryl. Quickly introduce yourself.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Cheryl Kortmeyer. I'm the Executive Director of the Corporate Volunteer Council of Atlanta. And I feel like I want to just talk and talk so that I can hear Charlie the chicken make that sound again, but I won't. I would say I'm feeling warm to hot today. I got out and went for a run this morning and got my kids out of the house, so I felt like that was a real victory. So right for now, I'm feeling pretty good.
Peace and quiet these days is a very scary thing.
Yeah.
All right, we have Peggy.
Hey. Good morning. I'm Peggy Crawford. I'm with the Oakwood Trails Neighborhood Watch Group. And I'm feeling warm this morning because it's so pleasant in my house. I have not been outside yet. I've been working on various projects and just a little warm this morning.
Thank you for sharing, Peggy. We have someone calling us from Atlanta at 404-718-0040. You are up.
Hi, this is Larry Silver. I work with the Community Foundation, and I'm feeling around 98.6, about average, and feel okay, kind of just chilling out and looking forward to the seminar.
Wonderful. Thank you. And again, Larry, good to hear from you. It was good talking to you last week. And for folks who don't know Larry on the phone, Larry is an expert in volunteer engagement. So I'm hoping to hear from him today. Moving on, I see Logan. Introduce yourself for me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Logan Serrano. I help Michelle with some of her social media and marketing and things like that. So my day job is with Leadership Gwinnett. I'm the marketing manager there. You might have heard of us. And today I'm feeling cold. I don't know why. I even have a scarf on. I'm just chilly and I can't shake it. So trying to warm up. Good to see you all.
Thank you very much, Logan. We also have Peggy Howland on the line. Unmute yourself.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. I am on the board of Norma Livingston Ovarian Cancer Foundation in Birmingham, and we have just canceled our run and are making it a virtual run. So I am, in the process with the board of trying to make sure that we maintain engagement with all of our members and get everybody up and going. I'm warm to hot today. I've been making lots of masks out to family and friends. I'm a psychologist, so I've been seeing a lot of patients on telehealth, and it's just busy time. So it's very heartening to see so many pull together and work together to try to help each other out. So.
Great, thank you very much. And I'm sorry to hear about that cancellation. I know you're not alone, unfortunately.
Exactly.
All right, Dr. Bernstein, would you like to say a few notes or a few messages for us?
Yes, I'm Arla Bernstein. I teach at Mercer University. I'd say I'm lukewarm today, cooling down from yesterday when I was hot because I had a productive day, and that was good. And now I'm just kind of easing down, although joining the workshop here. I work with a lot of community service organizations related to my classes, so that's why I'm interested, and most of the organizations I work with are very interested in motivating volunteers, and that's something that my students and I have done a lot of work with.
Great, thank you, Arla, I appreciate that. We have Carol on the line as well.
Good morning. This is Carol Yancey from Oakwood Trails Community. I'm warming up. It was chilly this morning, so I'm warming up, but I'm multitasking, telework, and working on things in between for the community.
Great, thank you, Carol. We have Asif on the line.
Hey, how are you? Let me turn on my video too for just this intro. My daughter's with me as well, so I think we're warm, getting hot. It's been getting used to the new normal. Does anyone want to say hi? Come over here. Just there. So this is the new normal where we're working and teaming up on projects together. And professionally, I do IT and marketing consulting. There are a lot of tools that technology companies are offering for nonprofits, especially right now, including Zoom, Google, Microsoft, RingCentral, where they're offering free services for the next few months. So if anyone needs assistance, I can definitely help out.
Thank you very much, and it's really good to see you. It's been many years, and I knew you before your daughter was born. So. Wow, just looking at her, I realized how much time has passed. All righty, moving on, we have Tixie Fowler, the amazing Tixie on the line.
And I'm going to scare you. I'm going to turn the video on for a second, I think. Yes, there we are. Let's see. Hello, everybody. I'm Tixie Fowler, and I'm the Executive Director of Gardens for Growing Community, Connecting Youth and Nature. And I'm running hot and cold, meaning the hot part, I am actually having time to get organized, which Michelle knows is not my strong point. Administration is, but I'm able to work a lot more on getting organized. I'm creating educational content that the teachers can use online to connect science and the real world, and really get a lot of the things that I wanted to do done. On the other hand, I do a lot of work in school gardens, and I I have a large garden at my own home, and my back is killing me because I have no hope, no help. And we're in spring and we're supposed to be planting. So it's kind of going back and forth. But overall, I'd say things are good. But I'm really looking forward to hear what I learned today. Thank you.
Good. And it's been good to see you as well, Tixie. Travis, you are up.
Hello, can everybody hear me? Hello?
We hear you.
Oh, excellent, fantastic. My name is, I'll save everyone the video part of this thing for right now. I did not present myself very well. My name is Travis. I'm the executive director of a new nonprofit based in Atlanta called Right Boot. And we do recycling, humanitarian aid donations, and disaster relief donations and things like that. I'm feeling warm, which is good. This has been a kind of a blessing to be able to sit down and focus only on the logistical stuff that goes in with growing and starting a nonprofit. So I'm feeling pretty positive about that, and I'm excited to meet everybody and hear all about the corporate volunteering and all that other stuff. It's gonna be great.
Great, thank you, Travis. And I would love to connect with you another time about the lack of glass recycling in DeKalb County, Georgia.
Cool.
Help me out with that. Gary Harris, you are up, sir.
Hi, morning. Gary Harris. I'm the managing director for the Center for Sustainable Communities. We're all about making communities greener, cleaner, healthier, safer, and more climate resilient. And we do that through an equity and an environmental justice lens. And I'm feeling superheated this morning. Superheated is an engineering term where, water boils at 212 degrees and then steam comes off. But if you add more energy to that, it becomes superheated. So I'm superheated this morning because I'm multitasking 5 items deep. So excited to be on the call this morning, superheated fashion.
Thank you, Gary. And I think it's been since the 2018 Just Energy Summit since I have seen you last. So thank you for joining us. We have someone that is Phoenix 4 engaged today. I don't know who that is. You want to pipe up? All righty. Caroline.
Hey, good morning, y'all. I am the senior projects attorney for Georgia Appleseed, and I am, you said what is my temperature, and I thought about the swimming pool at a resort in Mexico I was at a few years ago. The water was just perfect. That's my temperature for today. We have been doing a bunch of work around housing issues. You may have seen in the AJC today that there's a call for a statewide moratorium on evictions. Our focus is keeping people in healthy housing and dealing with ending the school to prison pipeline. And so the current situation has got us kind of not redirected, but concentrated on the issues. So really glad to talk with y'all. We do a lot of work with volunteers, often with pro bono attorneys doing research for us. So glad to have this gathering, Michelle.
Great. Thank you for joining us, Caroline. Okay, we have a number 404-936-8131. Have I called that yet?
No, you didn't, but I'm on now. Good morning, everyone. This is Mary Wilson. I am with a new organization called Ubuntu Community Catalyst. We are in the South Fulton region. I am feeling lukewarm this morning only because this is my second Zoom meeting, and for the work that we are developing in the South Fulton region, this is going to be quite a challenge in terms of using Zoom because we are working on developing residents, and that's a bottom-up approach, and many of our residents don't have access to Zoom and a lot of the other online video conferencing platforms. So I am sort of modeling that by calling in this morning to let people know that that is an issue in underserved communities.
Great, and thank you very much for recognizing that. All righty, who has not introduced themselves? Go ahead and speak now.
I chimed in a little late. Can you guys hear me?
We can, go ahead.
Okay, great. So I'm Mandy. I volunteer with Doc B Cares here in Atlanta. That is a nonprofit that has an after-school program for kids from marginalized communities in the Southwest Atlanta area. And I volunteer as a member of the board. So I've always been sort of on the outside looking in and trying to help with ways to market or do fundraising, but I've never really been directly involved with the program. So it's been a learning experience for me. And since these opportunities have become available to learn more about resource development, I've just been feeling compelled to sort of take advantage of that and sort of propel myself further into this world and absorb whatever you guys have to offer to figure out how I can, contribute more, especially in a time like this in this climate. So I would say I'm feeling relatively warm today. And I feel like this has been stages. Like I went through a stage of sort of shock, and then a stage of sort of grief and anxiety and fear. And then now I'm in a stage of acceptance. And, somebody else mentioned this is the new normal. That's kind of how I'm feeling is, okay, now, so we're in it. We know it's happening. So this is normal now. Here we go. And how are we going to proceed forward? So that's me today.
Great. Thank you, Mandy. And nice to see you again. Just met you a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And I actually saw that I missed Alejandra from coming from either Denver or Costa Rica.
Denver, and I guess I'm going to be here for a while because there's no flights to Costa Rica. So I am actually in my PJs, so I'm not conditioned to be seen, but I'm the executive director of a nonprofit organization in Costa Rica. And we have a sea turtle conservation program that relies 95% of its income and activities on volunteers. And that's going to be a big challenge now that we're facing this whole situation. And of course, we're dealing with all kinds of things that are changing. We're having a campaign to help the elderly in these areas, because are areas that are hit very hard on economically. So we're focusing on that. We're really, really excited and busy and working super hard on bringing relief to the people over there. So I'm really looking forward to hear ideas about how you guys engage in volunteers.
Great. Thank you, Ali. And good to hear your voice again. It's been a while.
Same here.
All righty. Anybody else before we move on? All righty. Okay, let's go ahead and get into the meat of this webinar. Again, we took it from an hour down to a 45-minute format. And so we are running about 5 minutes behind schedule. So to speed us up, I am going to start us off with our statistics. I wanted to just give you an idea of some numbers around volunteering in the US. And again, our topic today is reimagining volunteer impact. And after I kick us off, we'll have Cheryl Courtmeyer with Corporate Volunteer Council talking to us for about 10 minutes or so. All righty, so there are 63 million volunteers in the US. Wow, that's a big number. Right now, at least the information I could find, is that volunteers are valued at a national value note, so it's different by state, at $25.43 per volunteer hour. Volunteers donate 10 times more than non-volunteers. Let me let that sit with you for a minute. A study by Fidelity Charitable said that 87% of volunteers stated that their relationship between where they volunteer and who they support was critical to how they actually allocate their dollars. So where they volunteer, they also financially support. Only 7% of folks who donated didn't volunteer to the organization for various reasons. They couldn't, they didn't want to, they'd rather stroke a check, whatever it might be. And so the reason I'm lifting all of this information up to you is that there is a clear-cut relationship between being a donor and being a volunteer. And as we all know, is that often we have a volunteer plan in place, how we're going to engage, retain, attract, recognize, etc. Then we have a fund and resource development plan, which we have sometimes like a sub-plan around our donors. But as you just heard, there is a lot of crossover there, so you really do need to keep that in mind. And the same is true around communications, is that to have a strong fundraising and resource development program, you need strong communications. To have a strong communications program, you need to have your fund and resource development folks and plans in place. All right, donors and volunteers, if you guys were on the last webinar that we have, are both resources of the organization, in addition to partners, technology, etc. And so all of our comfy combos that we have moving forward on a weekly basis, we're going to address a sliver of each of those different resource areas. So today we're really focusing on your current volunteers. The donor retention and volunteer retention piece of this is absolutely critical, because if you lose a volunteer, you are losing likely a donation. And sometimes people will push back a little bit and say, well, you know, the volunteers don't give as much. You know what? And they might not at that point in time. Volunteer giving sometimes will ebb and flow. Right now, we're probably going to experience less than maybe what we have in the past. But that, my friends, is the reason for you to make sure that your volunteers are engaged and they're informed about what you're doing. And we'll talk a lot more about that later on in our call. So right now, as I wrap up the introduction, and I'm so glad everyone was able to say a few words about where you're at today. We got to know everyone that was on the call a little bit. I want to introduce Cheryl Courtmeyer with Corporate Volunteer Council. She's going to talk to us a little bit around what the Corporate Volunteer Council is, what the role the Corporate Volunteer Council has been in the community, give us some examples and great ideas around virtual volunteering, a little bit of pulse around what the corporate social responsibility leaders, at least in the Metro Atlanta region, feel around what's happening right now, and just some creative solutions they've been able to lift up. So Cheryl, take us off.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me this morning, Michelle. And can everybody hear me okay? Can you hear me? Great. Okay. I'm going to try to talk fast because I know you mentioned 10 minutes, but I want to allow plenty of time for this fantastic group of people to share, because I think a lot of times the best ideas come out of the group brain trust. I did want to mention that I heard Gary Harris on the line, and when you talked about superheat, Gary, I almost pulled my kids in for their daily science lesson as we're learning from home, so I'll pass that on to them. But as Michelle mentioned, I'm Cheryl Courtmeyer, and I'm Executive Director of the Corporate Volunteer Council of Atlanta. That we call ourselves the CVC, not to be confused with CDC, please, but Corporate Volunteer Council. And our mission is to support member companies in their strategic commitment to employee volunteerism and civic engagement. So what does that mean? We provide programming for people at companies who are community facing. So they might be community affairs professionals, they might be in charge of philanthropy or corporate social responsibility, or CSR as we call it, or they might be someone in an HR or communications role that is in charge of engaging with community on behalf of their company. So the CVC is there to provide best practices so that they can do their job and support the community in the most meaningful way. Now, typically we meet in person, just like I know many of you meet with your constituents in person, but we have pivoted to what we are calling CVC Solutions Hours, We are hosting weekly calls with our CVC members. We have about 100 member companies that participate with us, as well as 15 nonprofit member partners. Our solutions hours are a time when our members can come together and talk about what their challenges are in the community, what's working well, where they're stuck, and again, leverage that group brain to really problem solve and think of new solutions. So today I'll share a few of my takeaways from the past few solutions hours that we've hosted. And while I'm talking about volunteers in a corporate context, I think a lot of the trends we're seeing are things that can be applied to community volunteers and individual volunteers. So I hope you'll get some good takeaways. I want to start by thinking about sort of 3 areas where we need to think about volunteers in this current state of affairs. So the first thing that really stands out to me is scanning your volunteer base. So how has the pandemic and the current state of affairs affected them? Is everyone working remotely? Are some of your volunteers still having to, report for work? Do they have elderly parents there trying to make sure are okay? Do they have kids at home? Sort of scanning your volunteer base and thinking about them as individual people and sort of what their needs and state of mind might be. Also, I think it's important at this point in the game to think about communication with your partners. So if you have corporate partners that have been longstanding supporters, ask what their current priorities are for their company. So one thing we're seeing in the corporate space, and again, I think this is applicable to all human beings, is first companies are looking at their employee base and making sure everyone is safe and healthy and has what they need. So a lot of employee relief programs are kicking in and taking care of their people. We know that companies are also thinking about the reality of financial impact and the impact that these times will take on dollars and what they have available to support their employee base and support the community. We know that a lot of companies are thinking about COVID-19 response and recovery funds and how they can help with the big picture. But then we as an organization are really encouraging our corporate friends to think about their existing nonprofit partners and stand by them, because let's face it, we're all affected during these times, right? So when you communicate with your partners, sort of know where they are in all those areas of context. And then likewise, if you have individual volunteers, think about how their lives have been affected and talk to them about sort of where they are. And then third, asking for help. So you kind of know where your partners stand, and then you're thinking about your organization or your community group and what you all have the bandwidth to do with this new normal. And then thinking about where your most pressing needs are and asking for help. Do you need help connecting with clients you typically serve in new ways? Do you need resources to change the way you're delivering your mission? Is now the time to create new virtual programs that you've been thinking about that might replace your standard programs or enhance them in some way? And if so, how can volunteers help you with that? I know from several organizations that I've worked with, we've always been amazed by the talent and resources within our volunteer network if we simply ask. So if you get to know your volunteers and what their professional skills are, as well as their personal interests. I have my coworker, my dog, coming to join me here. It's a good time to have those conversations with your volunteers and really find out more about them. And just remember, throughout all of this, we are all experiencing this for the first time. And so everyone is trying to figure out new solutions and leaning together to sort of link arms and get through this together. So that goes for corporate volunteers as well as individuals. So people are trying to figure out how they can help. We have a lot of companies currently who are really thinking about skills-based volunteering. So many of their employees are at home and they're thinking about how can we leverage specific professional skills to support our community partners. So to give you an example of that, we have Cox Enterprises is a member of the CVC, and
currently Cox is leveraging some of their IT folks who are at home, who are used to being on site managing, you know, their technology infrastructure, but now they're at home and Cox wants to keep everyone on the payroll that they can. So they are assigning community partners to these tech teams to design apps for some of their nonprofit partners. Currently, Cox is building an app with Boys and Girls Club of Metro Atlanta. It is a STEAM app so that Boys and Girls Club can get this out to their middle and high school youth that they serve and help them with their education. So that's kind of a fun and innovative connection, you know, again, leveraging those skills-based volunteers. This is a time to innovate. So if you have a challenge, ask your corporate partners to help you solve that challenge. So just keep that word innovate top of mind. I also want to say that mental health is a huge concern for our corporate friends and for all of us. So one of my favorite quotes is a Booker T. Washington quote, and that is, "Those who are happiest are those who do the most for others." So I think a lot of companies are keeping this in mind, as well as individuals. We are at home. We want to be part of the solution in these times. So really asking your volunteers, you know, how do you want to help us? Here's what we need. How can you help is a good way to go. Let's see, I wanted to give just one or two more examples quickly, and then we can open it up for questions, Michelle. I know Evershed Sutherland Law Firm uses a technology platform called HiQ. And so when their employees work remotely all over the globe, they have access to the technology they need. So when we realized that everyone was shutting down and working remotely, Eversheds reached out to all of their nonprofit partners and said, hey, what technology do you need? How can we support you? And they gave their nonprofit partners access to this technology that the firm is using. So that really stood out to me when I heard one of our meeting participants talk about access and equity. There are a lot of companies out there that really want to help be a part of the solution and get technology in the hands of those who need it most. So as you think about barriers and ways that volunteers can help and resources we need, that's a great thing to ask your corporate partners about, or your volunteer base, because people have unusual connections. One quick thing I'd like to mention is, as you innovate with your volunteers, it's always good to think about liability in the back of your mind. So there are legal resources available to the nonprofit community. For example, the Pro Bono Partnership is offering a lot of support to the nonprofit community, and the Georgia Center for Nonprofits as well. So those are two great resources. And one final resource I'll mention, Michelle, I shared with you, is the company IBM has been doing skills-based volunteering for many years. And they have a website that links to different skills-based resources and ideas. And I'm going to put that in the chat box here so that you all have access to that resource. And I'll quit talking now, but thanks again for having me.
I had to unmute myself. Thank you, Cheryl. You did a great job. This is Charlie the Crazy Chicken.
Thanks, Charlie and Michelle.
All right, let's have a couple minutes if anyone has questions for Cheryl. Go ahead and ask them now.
Hi, this is Carol Yancey. I'm sorry, it's a lot of feedback. One question about the IBM skill base, is that for organizations like us, community organizations, neighborhood watch groups?
Carol, from what I understand, it's applicable to anyone. So we know that if you have volunteers, you've got people with skills. So, you know, when you think about professional skills, for many it would be, you know, marketing and communications or finance skills, but it also is a professional skill if you work at Sherwin-Williams and you're a professional painter. So skills run the gamut, and there are a lot of great resources at the site that I'll share in a minute that would be applied to everyone.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Greetings, how are you?
Hi.
You shared a lot of great information. I'm hoping, I know you said you're gonna share it with us so we can pass it along. But one thing I was wondering, because my organization, Community Farmers Markets, whereas we need volunteers, because our work is, I don't know the word to describe it, but we haven't really access volunteers yet. We haven't really gone through that process yet. And right now is a time where I think volunteers could be really useful. I want to know, is it too late to start reaching out to volunteers, whether it be on an individual level or on a corporate level, to, to meet some of our needs?
I don't think so at all. I think now is a time, when people are not only innovating and in survival mode, but as someone on the call indicated earlier, it's a great time to plan and to strategize for the future. So if you have people already invested in your mission and what you're doing, I would say the more you can talk with them about being ambassadors and think about expanding your network through any existing invested people would be a great starting place. It's never too late to bring new people in for a great mission.
Thank you.
Sure.
Great. One last question for Cheryl, if there's one out there.
Yes, sir. Hi, Gary Harris, the science guy.
There he is.
Hey, what's going on? Super heat. In this time of uncertainty and with such variations in communications and instability in communications as well, how can a nonprofit expand or even start to grow a volunteer base?
Well, I think, we just don't know how long this will all continue to go on. So I would say if you have existing volunteers, maintaining status quo is a great place to be. Keeping your existing volunteers happy and giving them ways to engage with you. But if you are in a growth mode in general, that is when I would say, it's a time to plan and sort of start educating people who are potential future volunteers. I mean, if we are in this situation for a couple of months, now is a great time to put together some educational pieces about why connecting and volunteering with your organization matter and what's in it for the volunteers, right? So we all volunteer, or those of us who volunteer generally do so because we are moved or it's in our DNA. But there are also people who want to know what's in it for them. What can they learn? Who can they meet? What can they accomplish? And what metrics can they help you achieve? So if you can articulate that and make it something that you can easily hand off to potential volunteers, I think that's a great thing to work on now.
Yeah.
And then again, ask your existing network to share that out on your behalf as one of your asks. That can be one of your things I need that you can share out.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All righty, everyone. Let's go ahead and move on. Thank you, Cheryl, very, very much. I appreciate your sharing your expertise and your insight with all the friends on the call today. Okay, so I'd hoped to get this webinar into 45 minutes. Clearly that did not work. And so I certainly respect if you guys, anyone needs to drop off the call, but we're gonna go ahead and continue going. We'll move very rapidly so that we can certainly wrap up by noon. Logan will send out this recording hopefully by tomorrow or Monday. And then we have another Comfy Convo coming up next Friday. And our presenting pal is Katrina DeBerry with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. And we're going to be talking about communicating with funders now, what you can do to be ahead of the curve. So I encourage all of you to participate and attend. A little tip about how we're going to introduce ourselves next week is whatever, if you're drinking coffee or tea or a water bottle, I'm going to have you say your name, the organization, and why you're drinking out of what you're drinking out of. And if you're not, then you can tell us something else fun about you. So for those that have to jump off, thank you very much. We will go another 14 minutes and then y'all can be on your way. All right, so in the spirit of not having a PowerPoint, instead I'm going to share my screen with you, and we set up a worksheet that is a takeaway for this webinar. And so hopefully everyone can see it on their screen right now. If you can't, send us a note in the Zoom group chat. If you have called in by telephone, then when we send out the recording, we'll include this information as well. And so our topic again today, reimagining volunteer impact, and Cheryl did a really great job of giving us good examples and ideas and a pulse of what the corporate community is doing with their volunteers right now, and as they start to think through volunteer engagement in the future. And so we're going to talk about volunteering through 6 lenses, which we started talking about last week. The first lens is around leadership, and that's really being confident in your leadership with your volunteers right now. And to take that to the next level, so another lens, but a level up, is how can you really be bold? What can you do different? Remember that volunteers forever have been change agents. Volunteers in many issue areas, movements, are the reason that change did happen. And so if you're the leader of an organization, a neighborhood group, it's time for you to be bold and help encourage these volunteers to also be bold too. And so those first 2 lenses are around leadership. The next 2 lenses is really around being creative and innovative. So creative, a lot of us nonprofit folks, we've always described ourselves as creative. We create programs, we create ideas, we create ways to support each other. Encouraging everyone to be innovative now, what Cheryl so eloquently spoke to, is think outside of the box with your volunteers. And then that third tier of the 2 different lenses is around being collaborative and transformational. How can you really leverage your volunteers as change agents to help you transform in this opportunity out of all the bad that we're experiencing right now, but to transform something into something good and to the change that we've been wanting to see for a long time? And so volunteers play a critical role in all of these 6 different areas. So to back up, at the very top of this worksheet, and we'll be using this same worksheet throughout all of the Comfy Convos, is your deep purpose statement. And so when we get off the phone, if you have a few minutes to ponder over the weekend, think about what that is. What is your deep purpose or your vision for volunteer engagement? Is it to help you with driving programs? Is it to help with frontline issues or the service areas that you work in? Is it to help you broaden your footprint? Is it to be savvy with your resources and know that there is a deep connection between your volunteers and your donors? It might be a blend of all of the above. It might be either or. It could be all number of things. But it's what your deep purpose is for volunteer engagement. And then at the very bottom of this worksheet, you see our North Star. So after you really think about your volunteers and you work through this worksheet and you're really trying to transform your volunteers into a stronger volunteer base, potentially transitioning some of those volunteers over to be donors, to be resource attractors, to be champions, to be communicators, really whatever it is that your organization needs now, and also, again, strongly encouraging you to think about in the future. While it's difficult to think at this stage what 2021 is going to look like, and I don't think anybody really has any idea, we need to make sure that we got our creative juices and we're using our minds to think about that to the very best of the ability that we have with the information we have on hand right now. But our North Star is what wise leaders always follow. It's that North Star in the sky the reason that so many of us that have worked in the social sector for years, in my case, decades, continue to do it. We still have a vision of a better world. We still have a vision of how we as individuals and our organizations can intervene to realize that better world. And so a quote I included here is around your North Star is give direction when the path ahead is hazy. And we all know it is right now. Humility when arrogance announces false victory, and inspiration when the outlook seems bleak, which is on my call last week and all the conversations I've had is that things do seem a little bleak right now, but we need to make sure that we have that North Star always there, always in the back of our mind. And even if you have to draw something on your wall or put it on your refrigerator, what your North Star is, or what represents your North Star, I encourage you to do that. So let's back up. So everyone that can see my screen, we're going to about a minute or two for probably a minute for each of these, just quickly talk through them. And so the first lens that we're reimagining volunteer engagement is through being a confident leader of your volunteers. And so as you're articulating your deep purpose for working and engaging with volunteers, you know, let everyone know. Talk to your staff. For those that don't have staff, talk to other group leaders. Talk to your family, colleagues. I have talked to so many colleagues in the last couple of weeks about, you know, what my plans are for my company, how to really serve you guys the best that I can. And just having those conversations have been truly so insightful. And as you're thinking through, you know, how to be that confident leader, what are your goals and why? Why are volunteers important to you and now? Why are they even more important to you in the future? Who manages your volunteers, and are they seen as a leader? And so do you have a designated person that is managing those individual volunteers? Is that you? Does it need to be someone? If you're really bought in to volunteers being these change agents, then maybe you need to think really hard about designating someone to help you think through that and help you manage that. And then how ready are your volunteers for a change? For those of us that have managed volunteers in the past, we often know that volunteers like status quo. But any good leader around change management will tell you is that in order to grow, you have to change. And so a way of kind of helping that happen seamlessly or as seamlessly as possible is keeping them informed and making sure that you're asking them for their feedback and make sure that you're recognizing them. And so as you're really moving to, just mute yourself, please. Or if you have a question, just hold them if you don't mind for a few more minutes. I'm running through this as fast as possible. And in this leadership category, how can you really transition your confidence into being that bold leader that you know and you feel and hear that you can, you just might not know how. So how can you make that call to action? Have you asked your volunteers to make a donation? Have you asked your volunteers about how they can be virtual volunteers? Have you asked your volunteers what their vision is of change in the area that you're working in? And so again, just be that bold leader. Whether you believe it or not right now, we really need those people to, you know, come out of the gates, come out hard and come out strong, and to help us really figure out how we're going to get through all of this together. Moving into that second tier, being creative and then pursuing that North Star of being innovative. You really want to involve your volunteers in shaping your strategies and activities. Right now, friends, is a perfect time to do that. So many of us are stuck behind our computer screens doing our work. It's a great time to communicate, solicit ideas and feedback, do quick Google Forms or do a Survey Monkey and really just try to bring your volunteers together, keep them engaged and keep them active. If they're anything like me and you guys, we want that engagement. We want to share our ideas right now because we're in such an unknown place and we're working often by ourselves that it's nice that someone's asking you what your opinion is. Think about how volunteers can drive your current and future efforts. Remember, again, they're your change agents. Your volunteers are often your donors. If you want to keep them involved, keep them involved. What are the key messages that you're sending out to your volunteers, and how will you communicate those key messages? Make sure that as you're working with your comms team, if you have one, if you don't have a comms team, at least bounce some ideas and just be very cognizant about not putting out 16 different messages. Try desperately to narrow your messages down to a few messages. And then, are there any trainings that need to happen or resources that you need to invest in or look for resources to keep your volunteers involved while we're all working remotely? There's a lot of great resources out there. We have put together a resource document that does highlight some of them. And so I really encourage you to think about using technology to keep folks involved. And as you're being innovative, just think of new ways of working with your volunteers as they become, donors, or as they engage in a virtual volunteering opportunity. Really think about what you need as an organization, and how can you take this current place that we're in and leverage it to grow your organization. And honestly, guys, there might have been maybe a program or a project in the past that your volunteers have wanted to do. Maybe you're in, maybe you're in early education and you've got a group of volunteers that have been wanting to do like a language program. Now, guys, is the time to start thinking about that. How can you do that? What are some ways that you could maybe pilot a language program or a music program at your school? How can you leverage the strength and the power of your volunteers to be innovative? Our last category, folks, is around being collaborative, with our North Star being transformational. How can we partner with other folks and leverage our volunteers' passion and love for the issues we represent and the organizations we represent and the shared vision we all have? And so how can you really work together? Right now, we know we're in this terrible part of our history together. So let's make sure that we keep our volunteers on the front line, that they are leading that movement, and that they are really helping you to think about and craft collaboratively with other volunteers, with staff, with other partners, with possibly your government friends, whoever you work with, your stakeholders, is how can you collaboratively work together to think about your future and how you're going to remain sustainable, relevant, and viable. And lastly, again, when you're thinking about transformation, what do you want to transform into? What do you want to be? Think about five years out. And as you're doing that, again, keep your North Star front and center about what you want to be when you grow up. For those of us still learning and growing every single minute of every day. All right, that is enough from me. And so I am going to stop share right now. And we've actually kept majority of our participants, so that is good to see. I am sincerely sorry that we have run over. I did try to not be, I tried to keep it at 45 minutes, but it turned out to be impossible. So let's go ahead and open it up to questions that anyone has of myself, of Cheryl, and if you out there have been working with your volunteers in a way that you feel is bold, innovative, or transformative.
This is Mel, and I just want to say that your presentation made me think about not only the deep question for the organization engaging its volunteers, what does it need to do that, but also from the volunteers' perspective, what is their deep need that's being met by volunteering with you? And for some people, it may be because they care very deeply about the issue or the people served, but there are actually lots of reasons that people get involved in volunteering beyond that. So it might be their community. They're looking for like-minded people or people with a common interest to connect with outside of their daily routine. It might be because they're learning something by doing that volunteering. Maybe they were coming for the free food. There are lots of reasons and they're all valid. And so that just gets me thinking about, like, maybe if one of the things that they really enjoyed was community, that's a way that you can engage them by creating that community somehow, like pulling that group together that maybe isn't getting together in person the way it normally would. So that just gives me lots of thoughts about how to engage volunteers creatively. And I don't know if anyone has had specific experience with that. But when people feel like their needs are being taken seriously, they will really invest. They'll invest with their money and they'll bring new creative ideas to you. So that just gets me really fired up.
Yeah. Hey, Mel, this is Tamia, and I would have to say, so I'm pretty sure you guys, this has been a great webinar. I don't know how many of you all have been on any happy hours, but yesterday we did a happy hour. I'm with the Urban Land Institute, and we did a happy hour for our volunteers, and I was a little nervous at first, you guys. So I've been doing a few with my family and close friends. It's like 7 of us. But I was a little nervous for some reason when it was like, oh, 40 of our member volunteers have gotten on this Zoom call for a happy hour. But it was very refreshing as we are practicing social distancing. And also what it allowed our volunteers to do was give us some insight in what their companies are doing, what they're experiencing from a real estate and land use side of things. And then it challenged us to take some of those comments and think about content that we could spread, locally, virtually. And so they were very happy. They was like, we're so glad to see everyone. It was very exciting, but it was a time that we used together, like information gathering, because we're like, okay, what do our members want to hear from us? What do our volunteers want to hear, from the Urban Land Institute? And being able to have our very active members join a call and say, maybe hosting a webinar about this, about restaurants and retail right now would be timely. And so we use that time to collect information, which was very helpful. I'll let you guys know how it actually goes once we execute. Gathering information is one thing, executing is another. So.
Great. Thank you very much to both of you ladies for sharing your thoughts and words of wisdom and ideas. Does anybody else out there have a comment or a question, words of encouragement you would like to share with the group before we close this out?
This is Cheryl again. I just wanted to reiterate, I loved what you had to say about your, connecting with your volunteers just now. That was amazing. I worked at Trees Atlanta for a number of years, and we had a giant volunteer corps. And I remember it was so eye-opening. We, always had people coming to us to volunteer, and we were very busy, and we would get right to work. And we never really slowed down to ask people why they were there, or unless they just offered that information. But at some point we did pause and ask our volunteers to tell us all about themselves. And that was the most well-spent use of time I can think of in most of my time there. We learned, that people wanted to donate, but they'd never been asked. We learned that people were there because they wanted to meet others in the community. We learned that some people were educators that could help us with education programs. We learned that one gentleman was a senior vice president at a local bank. We had no idea. He later helped us raise millions of dollars to plant trees. So when you ask, it opens up a world of possibilities. And now is a great time to connect with those volunteers and make use of this captive audience. So thanks, Michelle.
Of course, and thank you, Cheryl. Anybody else have a question or comment, words of encouragement? And it's about 12:05, so I'm gonna wrap us up here in the next minute or two.
Hey, it's Asif. Just a quick comment as we're moving into this, start my video again, this technology arena. I think one thing if people recognize is that it's made to be easy. It may seem daunting when you look at all the buttons and options, but if you just remember, if my parents can do it, anyone can do it. So just remember that it's made to be easy.
Thank you. Yes, I'm actually one of those people. Technology used to scare me, but now I'm really learning to appreciate it and leverage it to continue working and providing services like this to you guys. All right, everybody. I want to again thank you so much for participating today. super great to see everyone's faces, hear your voices, and talk about volunteers having such an amazing impact on our communities, the people we love, the issues we serve, and just truly reimagining what volunteer engagement is going to look like for all of us. And so a couple of final thoughts. One, our next Comfy Convo is going to be next Friday. Haven't worked out time yet, but probably 11 or 2 o'clock on Friday. I'm leaning towards 11. Our presenting pal will be Katrina DeBerry with the Community Foundation for Greater Atlanta. Our topic will be about connecting with your current funders and what you can do to kind of move some things along there and start to plan for the future. And some tips about reaching out to them if you haven't already heard from them. And if you have heard from them, how to circle back just to get a greater understanding of what message they're putting out there and what their funding is going to look like for the remainder of this year into 2021. For those of you who are not familiar with Georgia Center for Nonprofits, they are a great organization. They have been putting out webinars over the last couple of weeks, and they did one yesterday, and they're doing, I think, 1 or 2 on Monday about some of the loan options available, some of the programs under CARES, the PPP option, their tax credits, and how to deal with unemployment. A lot of really great information out there. And so please, 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 if you haven't signed up, I encourage you to do so. Community Foundation for Northeast Georgia is also doing a weekly series of workshops on Thursdays as well. I have unfortunately been preparing for this one, so I haven't been able to participate on that yet, but I've heard they're very, very good, so I encourage you to do that. Cheryl has in the chat box put up some information about the Corporate Volunteer Council and the IBM document that she referenced in her conversation with us earlier. And lastly, thank you everybody. You guys continue to inspire me. I continue to have faith and find strength in that faith that we're all in this together and that all of us are doing this work because we care so much and that we're the ones that have to be the leaders, not always in times that are great where things are going well, but times that are difficult. And again, just encourage you to be a bold leader, to be an innovative leader, and to be a transformational leader. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care. Enjoy your weekend. TGIF. And the last word will come from our Charlie, the crazy chicken. Bye, y'all.